So guys, Warzone has officially dropped, and today I'm going to be going through all of the best settings that you guys want to change. This video is going to be focusing on the console side of things, so controller and console related stuff. There's not going to be too much PC related stuff in here. Some of this will apply to PC as well, so just keep that in mind. But for the most part, this is more for the PS5 and Xbox players out there, focusing mostly on those consoles as well as the actual controller settings too. So without wasting any time, let's get stuck right into it. I'm going to move my webcam out of the way here, and as you can see over on the left there, I'm going to be going through all of these settings here. There are most of the stuff we're going to be going through is going to be in these two right here, the controller and the graphic settings, but I will go through all of these. And then I'll also show you the quick settings, which is actually really handy to set up. It's pretty basic, but it is worthwhile as well. So starting off with the controller settings, the number one thing you guys want to be doing is changing your button layout to tactical. Now, if I can just actually move my webcam back out of the way there, you can see down on the right there, it actually shows what is changing between the default setting and the tactical setting. As you can see highlighted in green on the actual picture of the PS5 controller, the only thing that's changing here is the right stick and the circle button are actually being switched. This means that your melee is now going to be done with circle, and then to actually, go prone, crouch, slide, all that kind of thing, that is going to be in your right stick. Now, the best setting that I have ever changed in all of my time over 15 years playing shooters is this exact setting. Honestly, once you change it, you will never ever go back. It is the best setting you can ever change. The reason for that is all of your movement is now in your sticks. You don't have to take your thumb off the stick to actually crouch. If you want to slide into cover, you don't have to take your finger off the stick to stop aiming to actually do that. So it's going to feel weird. I say this every settings video I've ever done. I have to explain. It's going to feel very weird when you first do this. You're probably going to die a few times because you're going to press the wrong button. Trust me, stick with it for a week or so, and I guarantee you will never ever go back. This is the number one setting that you should always change in any shooter that you ever play, and I can literally guarantee once you get used to this, this is the first setting you'll change every single time a new shooter comes out. So be sure to change this one. It is definitely very important. Now, moving down, I think this one is mostly just to do with the PS5 rather than the Xbox, because they do, obviously, the PS5 controllers have the haptics. I've actually turned off the haptics. This makes it feel a little bit weird when you actually pull the trigger. It kind of has a bit of a resistance to it. I personally don't like that. If you do like that, that's fine. For me, it's a little bit annoying, a bit distracting, so I just have turned it off. Obviously, sensitivity is always a touchy one. This is just completely personal preference. I actually play pretty low. Default is 4. I play on 5, but there's obviously what is there? Bloody 20. Okay, I didn't even know there was 20. So I'm on 5 out of 20. That's actually pretty low, but I know some people who play on max, sensitivity on a lot of games, and it can go well. So they each have their pros and cons. The slower you put your sensitivity, the better that will be at range. You're going to have more control at range. But then obviously if someone's behind you, it's going to take longer to turn around, and vice versa. If you're playing on 20, you will struggle probably to hit shots at long range, but then up close, if someone's behind you, you're going to snap onto them straight away. So this one's completely personal preference. The default's 4. I personally would recommend trying to go up a little bit. If you're normally a 4, go to a 5. I'm usually a 4. And I actually upped it to 5 just because that added quickness can really help once you get the hang of it. But obviously if you're a 4, don't go to 20 because that's just going to be ridiculous. Now, the next one you want to be going to is the interact and reload behavior. This is a very, very important one for Warzone. It doesn't really matter as much for Modern Warfare itself, but the default setting is just tap to reload. What this means is that at all times, it is tap square X on Xbox to reload your gun, or hold the button to interact. So open doors, open a chest, whatever the case may be. You always have to hold it to do that. And that's going to take a lot of time. Think about all the things you pick up. That includes picking up armor off the ground. You don't want to be holding the button every single time you do that. So you want to go to one of these two. It doesn't really matter which one you choose, to be honest. I went prioritize reload. This used to be contextual tap in Warzone 1. They've essentially added an extra option here, but prioritize reload is going to make it so that interacting and reloading are both tapping the button. So if I'm running around looting, I just have to tap X or square to pick up the item. I don't have to hold the button. And when I'm running around shooting and I need to reload, I also tap square, and that does the reload for me. When I'm in a situation where I can reload and there's also armor on the ground, for example, this prioritizes the reload. So it will, if I tap square, that will reload. And if I really want to pick up the armor, if that's what I'm trying to do, I can just hold that button instead. So this is essentially just prioritizing reload over the interaction. You can do it the other way. It's really just personal preference. For me, I don't want to run around and try to be reloading and I accidentally open a door and then I get killed because of that. So I've gone prioritize reload. I do personally think that's the best one, but honestly, both of these are definitely better than these two. So definitely change this one. This is going to save you a lot of time looting. And honestly, once you get used to it, you will never go back as well. Now, the armor plate behavior, this is an interesting one. I actually have a scuff controller. As you guys can see, it has paddles on the back there. So I can actually you know, apply armor to myself while I'm still aiming. I can still run around at essentially full speed. They have nerfed the speed, unfortunately, but I can sprint around still while armoring up, and that's really handy. But if you don't have a scuff controller, you can actually change this to apply all. What this means is that if you have no armor and you're trying to armor up, you can essentially apply one armor plate, and then you can actually let go of the button and it will put the rest of your armor plates in. It can get you in a little trouble, but I am pretty sure if you like, you know, switch to your weapon, I think it does cancel the animation. So this is one of those ones that's personal preference. If you don't have a scuff controller, this can be really handy because it means that you have a bit more mobility and still aim around rather than having to take your right thumb off the stick to actually hold triangle or Y. You can keep your thumb on the stick once you're, you know, once you put that first armor plate in. So this is a handy one to have, but then if you do have a scuff controller, it's just easier to apply one because then you have complete control over it essentially. Now moving into the advanced settings. This is an interesting one and I haven't actually done like full on research into this, but I've heard it from pretty much everyone that I've seen on Twitter, all of the top players and all that kind of thing. The aim assist, you want to set this to Black Ops. Now apparently this actually did get slightly nerfed in the Season 1 update, but essentially what everyone's saying is that the Black Ops aim assist is slightly stronger than the rest. I don't know why they even have options. There should not be options for aim assist. It should just be a universal aim assist. I'm not sure why, but apparently this one's the best. Like I said, they may have nerfed this in the recent update, so this may be irrelevant at this point, but from everything I've heard, the Black Ops one is definitely the best. So you may as well just equip it, and if it doesn't make a difference, it doesn't make a difference. Now, the last setting that you want to change in the advanced settings is the automatic parachute, if I can find it. There it is. Parachute auto deploy. You want to turn that off. This can sometimes, if you're not paying attention, this can sometimes cause a death, which is a little bit annoying, but it gives you a bit more freedom in terms of when you pull the chute, so you can get a bit closer to the ground before you pull your chute. It can result in you getting to the ground 1 second faster than your enemy. You can pick up the gun first and get the kill, so it's very handy to have. It may cause a death every now and then, because if you win the gulag and then you, I don't know, you check your phone, reply to a message, you look up and you've splattered on the ground, like it can cause that issue. But for me personally, if I'm going to play Warzone, I'm usually paying enough attention that I can tell I'm going to splat. So this one is definitely very handy to change as well. So that's it for the controller settings. Now going into the graphics settings. This one is personal preference. I've actually got the weapon motion blur turned off. I just think it looks nicer to have the motion blur turned off on the gun. I've still got it on the world motion blur. I kind of like a bit of motion blur in the actual game. It looks a bit dodgy without it, but I also don't like how it looks on the gun itself. So personal preference, it doesn't really change anything, to be completely honest. But as you can see in that picture that they've used there as the example, it kind of just makes things a bit clearer. I think that's why I like it, because you're turning around, your gun becomes a bit blurry and everything just blurs together kind of thing. So I turned this one off. I think it looks nicer, and I think it also actually does stop everything blurring together and looking a bit weird. Now for the field of view, this is a massive dub for us console players. We did not have this on the previous you know, Warzone 1, and we do finally have it. A lot of people are going to go 120, and if you can play on that, that's, you know, that's fine. This is really is personal preference, but the higher you go, the more you can see on screen. That's essentially how this works. I have actually gone 110 instead of 120. The reason being, for Warzone, you are fighting at long range a lot of the time, and so that extra 10% that I'm taking off, that does allow me to see some, you know, a little bit further at range while still giving me a pretty wide FOV. So you definitely want to up your FOV. It's going to look a bit weird when you first start playing, but this essentially means you can objectively see more on your screen. Like, you will see more people. You can see it by the picture that they've displayed. If there's someone hiding behind those pillars, for example, there on the left hand side of that, if your field of view is 80, you're not actually going to see them. If your field of view is 100, you will see them. So this is something you definitely want to change. The more you can see, the more information you can take in, the more aware you're going to be. So definitely up that FOV. Now you want to press square or X on this to actually bring up these settings here. These are very important settings. The ADS field of view, if you go independent, it means that when you zoom in, it will bring you back to the base field of view, which is it feels very zoomed in once you've been playing on a high FOV. You want to go to affected. This means that essentially when you zoom in, it's on the same field of view that you've just set to 110 or whatever you've set it to. It's not only a bit less disorienting, but again, you can see more on your screen. So it's very handy to have that. And then for the weapon field of view, you can see in the picture up there, the default one actually makes the gun a little bit bigger compared to the wide one that makes your gun a little bit smaller on your screen. Again, it just means you can see more stuff. The gun isn't in your way as much. Very, very small changes here. They're not going to, you know, they're not going to make you a pro player, but all of these little things do add up, and everyone who hasn't changed all the settings that I've just gone through, if you've changed all this and you're playing against them, I guarantee you're probably going to win those gunfights because of these changes. Now, this one is also really important. This is going to help a lot with your visual recoil. It doesn't actually change the actual recoil of the guns, but the first person camera movement. You want to set this to least. The default is obviously 100%, the least is 50%. This just changes the way that your gun bounces around a little bit. This is essentially changing the camera shake. So I know this game feels like it's got crazy recoil at times, and this definitely helps with that. So definitely go and change this one as well. Now, moving on to the audio settings, there's not too many in here, to be honest. These here that you can see, this is how I've set it up. This is just personal preference. For me, I've turned the hit marker volume down a little bit. It feels very loud when you're shooting someone with armor. It like takes over your whole audio, I feel like. So I've turned that down a little bit. I may even turn that down to 70 after I play a bit later today and just try and get that right. The music volume, I've turned that down a little bit. The dialogue, and this is like the voiceover audio. So if someone says, you know, loadouts incoming, for example, I've turned that down a bit just because, although it's handy to hear when the announcer says what's going to happen, when it's super loud and you're in the middle of a gunfight, it gets really annoying. So I've turned that down quite a bit. It's still loud enough I can hear when they are saying, you know, loadouts inbound or the circle's closing in or whatever. But if I'm in a gunfight and they tell me the circle's closing in, it doesn't just take over my whole brain and I can't think properly. So that's a handy one to change right there. Also, for the audio mix, I nearly missed that one. You want to go to headphone bass boost. This is going to make the footsteps essentially the loudest they can be. This has been tested across multiple Call of Duties now. The bass boost essentially just adds a bit to the thud of the footstep, and this is just the best setting you can have for footstep audio. Now, the last setting I've got here is actually in the interface settings, and this is a bit of a random one, but you want to go down to the telemetry settings. You want to set this to custom, and then you actually want to put the server latency and the packet loss on. This just means that, similar to what you guys have probably seen if you've watched a lot of PC Warzone creators, up in the top left it will always say like their ping and all that kind of thing, and this actually shows that in game now. So if you're lagging all of a sudden, you know, if you're about to enter a gunfight and then it pops up saying like you've started lagging, it kind of gives you that warning so you don't have to run into a gunfight not knowing you're lagging and then you shoot at them and it's not dealing any damage. So this is just handy information to have. The more awareness you have, the better in a game like Warzone. So this is definitely a very handy one. You can also just go all on. This just turns all of them on. It turns your FPS counter on and stuff like that. I'm not sure those even work on console, to be honest, because it says GPU temperature and stuff. To be honest, it shouldn't be saying that for console anyway. So you can change that to all on, but I've just gone custom for that one. And that is something that definitely I've found to be very, very handy that we didn't have in the previous version of Warzone. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it for the controller settings and the just general console settings for Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone. This is more specifically for Warzone, to be honest, but these essentially all apply to Modern Warfare 2 anyway. If you learned something in this video, if you did enjoy the video, be sure to hit that like button down below. I have plenty more Warzone content on the way, and so if you guys are new to the channel as well, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. But that is going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys out there on Warzone.